Kunjabi Adi Kunjabi Jai Radha Madhava Kunjabi Adi Kunjabi Adi Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jasodhanandana Brajajanaranja Jasodhanandana Brajajanaranja Chamunati Ravana Chadi Jamunati Ravana Chadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Adi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Adi Madhava Kunjabi Adi Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jasodhanandana Brajajanaranja Jasodhanandana Brajajanaranja Yamunati Ravana Chadi Jamunati Ravana Chadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Adi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Adi Radha Madhava Kunjabi Adi Jayo Vishnupad Paramahamsa Pariyujagacharya Ashtatara C.S. Madhya's Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda ki Gora Premanandi. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Well, it's a long purport. The text number is what? 11 or 12? 12. Yes, 12. Narayanam namaskritya
Narayanam Namasritya
Naram Chaiva Narottamam
Cheva
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam
Vyasa
Tato Jayam Udhirayat.
Tato Mutire.
And some listener very kindly let me know the meter is the same meter as Sri Brahma Samhita. We were stumbling a bunch with the meter yesterday and day before. Same meter. So 1:15:12. Tachejasata Bhagavan Yudhisala Shulapanir
Tejasat Bhagavan Yudhishura Pani
Vismapita Sagirijostram Adan Nujamhe
Visma Pita Sagirajo Sramadan
Anye Pichaham Amunaiva Kalevarena Prapto Mahindra Bhavane Mahad Asanardham Yat Tejasata Bhagavan Yudhishona Panir Vi Vismapita Sagirijostram Adan Nijam Me Anye Pichaham Amunaiva Kalevarena Prapto Mahindra Bhavane Mahad Asanardham. It was by his influence, Yat Tejasa. It was by his influence only that in a fight I was able to astonish the personality of God, Lord Shiva, and his wife, the daughter of Mount Himalaya, or Himalaya. Thus he, Lord Shiva, became pleased with me and awarded me his own weapon. Other demigods also delivered their respective weapons to me, and in addition, I was able to reach the heavenly planets in this present body, and was allowed a half-elevated seat. Purport. By the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, all the demigods, including Lord Shiva, were pleased with Arjuna. The idea is that one who is favored by Lord Shiva or any other demigod may not necessarily be favored by the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna. Ravana was certainly a great devotee of Lord Shiva, but he could not be saved from the wrath of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Ramachandra. And there are many instances like that in the histories of the Puranas. But here is an instance where we can see that Lord Shiva became pleased even in the fight with Arjuna. The devotees of the Supreme Lord know how to respect the demigods. But the devotees of the demigods sometimes foolishly think that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is no greater than the demigods. By such a conception, one becomes an offender and ultimately meets with the same end as Ravana and others. The instances described by Arjuna during his friendly dealings with Lord Sri Krishna are instructive for all who may be convinced by the lessons that one can achieve all favors simply by pleasing the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna. Whereas the devotees or worshippers of the demigods may achieve only partial benefits, which are also perishable, just as the demigods themselves are. Paragraph. Long purport. Another significance of the present verse is that Arjuna, by the grace of Lord Sri Krishna, was able to reach the heavenly planet, even with the self-same body, and was honored by the heavenly demigod Indradev. Being seated with him, half elevated. One can reach the heavenly planets by the pious acts recommended in the Shastras in the category of fruitive activities, and as stated in the Bhagavad Gita 9:21, when the reactions of such pious acts are spent, the enjoyer is again degraded to this earthly planet. The moon is also on the level with the heavenly planets, and only persons who have performed virtues only, namely performing sacrifices, giving charity, undergoing severe austerities, can be allowed to enter the heavenly planets after the duration of life of the body. Arjuna was allowed to enter into the heavenly planets in the self-same body, simply by the grace of the Lord. Otherwise, it is not possible to do so. The present attempts, going to the moon, bashing. The present attempts to enter into the heavenly planets by the modern scientists will certainly prove futile, because such scientists are not on the level of Arjuna. They are ordinary human beings, without any assets of sacrifice, charity, or austerities. The material body is influenced by the three modes of material nature, namely goodness, passion, and ignorance. The present population is more or less influenced by the mode of passion and ignorance, and the symptoms for such influence are exhibited in their becoming lusty and greedy. Such degraded fellows can hardly approach the higher planetary systems. Above the heavenly planets, there are many other planets also, which only those who are influenced by goodness can reach. In heavenly or other planets within the universe, the inhabitants are all highly intelligent, many more times than the human beings, and they are all pious in the higher and highest mode of goodness. They are all devotees of the Lord, and although their goodness is not unadulterated, still they are known as demigods, possessing maximum amount of good qualities possible within the material world. Reading this purport, it's easy to think of Srila Prabhupada sitting in his little room in the Radha Damodar temple, thinking of his audience, English-speaking parts of the world, and how are they going to understand all this? So what he didn't do was go into the detail of the scriptural reference that's from Mahabharata that gives this history. Rather, he's just highlighting the principles. And he's taking two principles. One is in his self-same body going to the heavenly planets, and how is that possible? And then the other is the benefit that goes to one who worships the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, in contrast to those who worship the demigods. So those two principles are the focus of his Bhaktivedanta purport. Now, if speaking to the Western, or the audience is the people in the Western world, they're not so familiar with demigod worship, in contrast to people who are from Indian origin and know at least reasonably something about demigod worship. But it, in introduction, it's a little bit of the educational method of compare contrast. To understand something, you compare to something that it's not. So there's worship, and then there's worship of demigods, and there's worship of those who are not demigods, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu. Worship of Vishnu is not in the category of the worship of demigods. And those who may worship the demigods, like Ravana and Hiranyakashipu worshipping this and the other demigod, they may become powerful, but they don't achieve what the devotees achieve that worship Vishnu. And so emphasis on the worship of Vishnu. And because of Arjuna being not just only a worshipper of Vishnu, but a dear devotee and friend of Krishna, so he had some privileges that otherwise are not available. So I've spent some time yesterday going through Mahabharata, and I wanted to pick out a few Mahabharata references. And I sent him a copy so he can circulate it to whoever would like a copy. Just references from Mahabharata. Not now. Going back, 4 references. Going back to the difficulty that Pandu had because of inadvertently killing and therefore being cursed, that he will not be able, as he interrupted the mating of an animal with another animal, that because of that he would also die if he ever mated. But he's the king, and having sons is so important. And so his 2 wives, what to do. Kunti informed the king. I was given this benediction by Durvasa Muni, and I could call various demigods, and through those various demigods produce children. So he authorized her, and the second, or one of the children, was Arjuna. When under Pandu's instruction to Kunti, she called Indra, and Arjuna was born. The name was given at the time of his birth, and this celestial voice or disembodied voice spoke of the glories of the child as he grows. And one of the things mentioned, it's in Mahabharata, it was foretold that these 2 things, he would go directly to the heavenly realm, and the second was, as it's stated in this verse, and that he would receive celestial weapons, including specifically mentioning the Pashupat weapon of Lord Shiva. Now that's in Mahabharata. So, fast forward in a later section, Vyasadeva instructs Arjuna, because the Pandavas are in this position of difficulty, where without all the detail, but there's detail in the Mahabharata, how very powerful personalities were aligned with Duryodhana, and Duryodhana being very wicked, Duryodhana with his armies, plus these exalted personalities, he was sure of victory in a battle, and therefore he was willing to risk everything and enter into battle. And the Pandavas were contemplating what to do. Vyasadeva said what to do. He happened on the place where they were and gave an instruction specifically to Arjuna. It was told that your time of birth, so now is your time to do. you should go to the heavenly realm and gather up celestial weapons because they'll be needed to defeat the opposing forces. And with that, Vyasadeva gave a mantra to Yudhishthira, whereby Yudhishthira giving the mantra to Arjuna, Arjuna could travel vast distances in a short time. And so he, Yudhishthira, gave the mantra, and Arjuna, being very obedient to his elder brother and to Vyasadeva, Yudhishthira didn't want to part from Arjuna's association, but he understood this was Vyasa's indication and it should be followed. So off he went. And zoom, zoom, Arjuna went to higher realms. And there's many things that happened. I'll just, in a mini way, summarize those many things that happened. He saw a strange-looking creature, and it turns out it was Indra. And some exchange with this strange-looking creature, and Indra said, later, I am Indra, I'm your father. Later, I'll give you celestial weapons, but first you go to the abode of Lord Shiva and get the Pashupat weapon from him. And then you come back and I'll give you other weapons. And the other devas will also give you celestial weapons. So the prophecy from birth was now underway, being fulfilled. And he, Arjuna, using this mantra, was traveling higher distances. He came to Mount Kailash. And as he was proceeding in Mount Kailash, he heard a voice, stop. And the voice was confrontational and challenging in tone. And so some discourse between the two. It was Lord Shiva in a disguise, and some strong words were spoken first by Arjuna, who are you, and stopping me, and then so a battle between the two. There's details and details. A battle between the two, and at one point in time, this being took Arjuna's bow, and the bow entered into his body. The bow disappeared, so Arjuna could no longer fight with his bow and arrow. So then he fought with sticks and boulders and tree trunks because he was very powerful and did nothing. All the arrows did nothing. His invincible quiver became empty. And so back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And then finally Arjuna understood, many things happened. Arjuna understood this isn't just, an ordinary person. This is Lord Shiva. And here I am in Mount Kailash, and this is Lord Shiva in disguise. So he made a murti fashioned from the earth and began worshipping Lord Shiva. And when Lord Shiva saw Arjuna doing like this, he disclosed his identity and said, you put up a good tussle. Well done, well done, well done. I desire to give you many weapons. I know why you've come here. Here's my Pashupat weapon, and here's this weapon, and here's that weapon. And you can go on further to gather weapons from other demigods, like Lord Indra, who said, after you receive my Pashupat weapon, you will receive weapons from him, from Indra, and other demigods. And so it happened. The prophecy from his time of birth, and it's similarly, in this particular verse, the things that were said would happen happened. In a Mahabharata mysterious way, but the things that were said would happen happened. And he, one of the statements at the time of his birth was he would be invincible, as powerful as Lord Shiva. And it was, Lord Shiva didn't defeat him, and he didn't defeat Lord Shiva. So Arjuna was now equipped to descend from the heavenly realm. Mentioned in the verse, but when he visited Indra in the heavenly realm, Indra gave him a seat near his, a half-elevated seat, as the son of Indra. So all these things are described in Mahabharata in much detail. Here it's not described in any detail, it's just mentioned. And Arjuna is recollecting his good fortune in having Krishna's association. The whole series of this example, that example, the next one, is the outcome of Arjuna relating to his brother that Krishna had departed this world. And then Krishna, who had departed this world, he began speaking Krishna, 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 Krishna. And finally, it's going to end up that he remembered the instructions that Krishna gave him in Kurukshetra on the battlefield, and now he's feeling very different. The feeling of separation is mitigated by remembrance of instructions, by sound vibration. So he feels quite whole again, instead of smashed. So similarly for all of us, there's lessons. Lesson 1, just repeat what's in the purport. Satisfying the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, results in everyone being satisfied, including Lord Shiva and everyone. The root of the tree or the stomach, those metaphors are commonly used. But worship of Krishna meant everything became auspicious in his life in comparison to and in carrying out the service that Krishna had given him. And the second is the otherworldly ability that Krishna can endow one with, like Arjuna was endowed with the ability. It came from Vyas and a mantra, but it was at Vyas being representative of Krishna. It was Krishna gave to Arjuna a means to go to the heavenly planets in the self-same body. And without that gift from Krishna, then one can't. And then in order to achieve, not in the self-same body, but in a different body, it's also required the procedure. That's the Vedic procedure. It doesn't have to be this ism versus that ism. It's just a principle. And that when the principle is followed in submission to the principle, then there's an outcome. And otherwise not. So the makeshift plan of materialists is not to be accepted, at least from the Shastra point of view. It's a nice parallel between the history in Mahabharata and the history in Srimad Bhagavatam. We'll just make one more comment. The history in Srimad Bhagavatam, Mahabharata is teaching principles of Dharma. Very much like, little different, but very much like Ramayana, teaching virtue. This is to be done, and that's not to be done. Like a nice example. Nice example. Just in the section prior to the mantra being given to Arjuna, there was a discussion in this whole section. There was a Draupadi, that they've been in exile for some period of time, a year or something. And Draupadi was sitting with Yudhishthira saying, you're well known in the world as being an ideal follower of Dharma. How is it possible that you did this gambling activity, what to speak of gambling me, and the result of which was near disaster? And you're the emblem of Dharma. She wasn't shaking her finger at him, but kind of. And his response is very interesting. He doesn't take exception. No, you're my wife, and what are you doing talking like this? He understood her heart, and he, being very a gentleman and understanding, he didn't lose his cool. He spoke very politely and respectfully, and ended up giving a very clear explanation, and strong, but a clear explanation. And then she felt foolish by questioning the integrity of her virtuous husband. Because Yamaraj doesn't depart from virtue. And that's how he began his reply. And so how his gambling and how gambling involving his wife, when he's 1/5 of her husband's, he makes the explanation. It's one of the duties. It's this business of dharma. The duty of a Kshatriya is, when challenged, then you meet the challenge, and whatever the challenge is. So he was performing his Kshatriya duty, and it gave very elaborate and clear explanation. So Mahabharata has an emphasis like the other itihasa, the other main itihasa, the Ramayana, where there's emphasis on virtue, what is to be done, what is not to be done. And having compiled all of this, we know from the Bhagavatam, Vyasa was not satisfied. So there wasn't something wrong in either of those texts or any other text, but without the direct glorification of the personality of Godhead, namely Srimad Bhagavatam, he wasn't satisfied. So Srimad Bhagavatam has a different emphasis. It's not minimizing dharma, the worldly sense of virtue, but the purpose of that virtue is what? An emphasis on Bhagavad Dharma. So Bhagavad Dharma doesn't trash virtue. Bhagavad Dharma pursues Krishna is to be pleased, but that's the front and center emphasis. And following behind the front and center emphasis is the other details, like following proper standards of virtue, the Varna and Ashram duties, for example, the duties of a Kshatriya, and being a fastidious follower, whatever that may mean in terms of worldly distinction or comfort, discomfort, that's to the side, and the important thing is the execution of duty, and then ultimately the purpose of duty is to satisfy Vishnu or Krishna. So that's the Bhagavatam. And it's not that it's absent in Mahabharata, but the same emphasis is differently situated. Namely, the importance of living a virtuous life, following the regulations or standards of religious life given to the Vedas. Mahabharata, Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay. Discussion. Yeah?
Just wanted to know which edition of Mahabharata do you study? Because there are so many different versions of Mahabharata.
So what's your question?
Which one do you refer to?
It's a nice question. And there's not a simple answer. You may know that Sri Dayananda Maharaj, after completing, the purports for the Bhagavatam with a team of other Sanskrit scholars, he moved on to Mahabharata, and he started and he stopped. And one of the reasons that he stopped wasn't just he got distracted, although he got distracted. He found, the following is what he told me when I was visiting recently, not too long ago, a couple of months ago, in Gainesville. I was in Alachua when we made a visit to Gainesville. So Sri Dayananda Maharaj was with us for that exchange. We were sitting in the sitting room, and he was doing the Sri Dayananda Maharaj, just going on and 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 on about Mahabharata is corrupted. That the manuscripts are corrupted. And then he went into detail about, South Indian, North Indian, this language, that language, and, they don't match at all. And so, what's the real Mahabharata? And which is what your question, not exactly, but his point was, and he said it like 6 times, even Madhvacharya, who wrote Mahabharata Tatparya Nirnayas, a celebrated commentary on Mahabharata. It's only a certain number of verses are the totality of the Mahabharata verses. Sri Dayananda Maharaj knows his stuff, so he was saying the Ganguly version is popular, but even that, then he gave examples and examples and examples of how it's the text is corrupted from it can't be because, then he gave this example, that example. So back to your question, which version do I refer to? And the standard ones. For me, because this language is good. Given the starting point is, which will the real manuscript of Mahabharata please stand up? And there's no such thing. So Krishna Dharma, did a kind of summary study, very nice English, easy to read, easy to understand, and largely faithful to the Ganguly version. So I refer to that, but largely, but I, for example, just on this topic of this verse from the Bhagavatam, I had to refresh myself of Arjuna's battle with Lord Shiva and how that went down, and Lord Shiva being pleased and giving him his Pashupat weapon and so forth and so on. I had to refresh myself. So I went to Krishna Dharma's book. And then I had remembrance, I'm just elaborating, but I had remembrance that Arjuna had this benediction, that he would have celestial weapons. And how do you get celestial weapons? You go to the heavenly realm. So I had that recollection. But, when I went to Krishna Dharma's book, I couldn't find it because he just did a much shorter version. So then I went to the Ganguly version. And this statement, that at the time of birth, he'll have powers equal to Lord Shiva. He'll do battle with Lord Shiva. He'll be giving the Pasha. This, and from birth, this voice from the sky. And then he'll get celestial weapons from many, many demigods. Prophesized, when he's just like a newborn baby. And then the events unfolded. So that's not in Krishna Dharma's writing. But it's in Ganguly version. The English, I have multiple English translations of the Ganguly Mahabharata. So back to your question, I sometimes refer to that. If details are needed, that just were omitted in the Krishna Dharma version. But the English of the Krishna Dharma, there's other, without naming names, there's other plausible, readable English versions that are also diminished from the Ganguly version. But that's kind of like a standard, but of what is the original manuscript of Mahabharata. It's it's a close representation. But Sri Dayananda Maharaj said he's writing a book Mahabharata as it is, or not as it, Mahabharata, he has some nice language, adjustments of the corruptions within Mahabharata. So then he retells based upon other scriptural references of misstatements or historical information that just can't be, and he restates it in the way that it can be. So that's a long answer to your question. I just like Krishna Dharma because the English is easy. It's very well done and faithful. Anything else? Yes?
I'll turn on the mic since... Can you hear me, Maharaj? Guru Maharaj?
What?
Can you hear me?
Kind of. Not so well.
How about now?
A little better.
So, thank you for the wonderful explanation from Mahabharata about this pastime of Shri Arjun receiving the mercy of Lord Shiva. I remember reading in Krishna book this pastime. Shri Arjun himself explains along the end of the Krishna book, or the chapter 89 of Canto 10, which is explaining the supremacy of Lord Krishna. And so I was looking at Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur's commentary on that chapter, so Canto 10, chapter 89. It's the chapter that goes over how Prabhu was trying to determine who is the supreme amongst Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, and Lord Vishnu. And then there's a section there where a description is given of, in Dwarka, when there's a Brahmin and his child died. And does this sound familiar? So the child died, and the Brahmin went to the palace of Ugrasena and said, "What kind of king are you that these kind of irregularities are happening?"
What kind of king are you?
Excuse me?
What kind of king are you?
Yes. And then there's a description where Arjun detects that what's happening is there's lack of faith in the Kshatriya community as a whole. And so Shri Arjun himself goes to the Brahmin and says, "I'm not Lord Shiva, I'm not Lord Krishna, but I will rescue your children." And Arjun recounts having the pastime of receiving the boon of the Pashupati from Lord Shiva. And then in the process of explaining his prowess, Arjun proceeds to try to rescue the children of the Brahmana. And it describes how Arjun goes to the higher planets and even to Brahmaloka and then down to the hellish planets and
Yeah.
was unsuccessful.
Yeah.
And then the really beautiful pastime occurs where the Brahmana said, "You failed. Even Lord Keshav cannot help, so how can you, an eunuch," referring to that pastime of the Pandavas, "be successful in this attempt?" And so Arjun became ready to fall into a fire. And at that time, Lord Krishna, who was there, said, "Don't do this."
Yeah.
And then took him in his chariot. And Bhagavatam beautifully describes how the chariot went through all the planets, and then through Brahmayati, and then to the residence of Sri Mahavishnu. And Mahavishnu says, "It was I who stole or took away all the Brahmana's son, because I desired to have you both, have darshan of both of you, Lord Krishna and Arjun. The pastimes that you are performing to remove the demons is completed, and please return." And then Shri Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur gives a beautiful explanation.
The sound reproduction, there's some key phrases I'm losing, and I don't know what to do.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's the combination of my ears, the sound system, and your voice. I'm getting most of it, but I'm not getting all of it. I probably could understand better without the microphone. Let's try that. There are people remote. There are people that are attending this remote.
Okay.
So I don't know what to do. But I don't know what to do. I think you should speak, but try to position the microphone so that that reproduction of sound is better. Or if I'm missing something, I'll ask you to repeat it. Maybe that's it.
Thank you for asking me to speak louder. I tend to mumble, so. I've been accused of that.
Combination of three things. Okay.
But I was just looking at a purport that Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur explains, because I read this because of the Haridwar Yatra, and Mahavishnu says to Arjun and Krishna that your desires for eliminating the demons has been fulfilled. Now, for the benefit of people in general, appear as Sri Narayana. And then it says, thus instructed by the Supreme Lord of the topmost planet, meaning Mahavishnu, Arjun and Sri Krishna chanted Om, bowed down to the mighty Sri Mahavishnu, and taking the Brahmana's sons, they returned with great light to Dwarka by the same path which they had come. There they presented the Brahmana with the sons, who were in the same infant bodies in which they had been lost.
Yeah.
The next verse is just nectar from Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur. It says, having seen the domain of Mahavishnu, Arjun was totally amazed. He concluded that whatever extraordinary power a person exhibits can only be manifest by the mercy of Sri Krishna Bhagavan's mercy. So Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur says, astonished to see the extraordinary grandeur of Mahavishnu, Arjun said, just see, though I am a mere mortal, by Krishna's mercy I've seen the Supreme Godhead, the root cause of everything. Then after a moment, Arjun thought again, but why did Lord Vishnu say that he took away the Brahmana's children out of a desire to see Krishna? Why would the Supreme Personality of Godhead hanker to see his own expansion? Perhaps it was a temporary whim of his. Is it that he could not see Krishna, Sri Krishna Bhagavan in Dwarka, because Krishna does not allow anyone to see him without his special attention? Well, maybe he doesn't have that power, but still he comes to Dwarka every year to steal the children of the Brahmana. Why doesn't he at that time see Krishna? He was visible even to an oil seller and a betel nut peddler living there. Perhaps he could not see Krishna in Dwarka because Krishna cannot be seen without Krishna's desiring it. And why also would Mahavishnu, the compassionate master of all Brahmanas, have repeatedly tormented an elevated Brahmana? Year after year, he perpetrated such a vile act only because of his strong desire to see Sri Krishna. He may have acted improperly for that reason. But why couldn't he have sent a servant to kidnap Brahmana's son? Why did he have to come himself to steal him from Dwarka? I can understand, Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur in his realization says, quoting Sri Arjun, I can understand that he intended to cause so much distress to a Brahmana of Krishna's city that Krishna would be unable to tolerate it. Then he would grant Lord Vishnu his audience. Inspired by Vishnu's form and super soul within, the distressed Brahmana came out to pour his complaints to Krishna in person after the death of his sons. Thus it is clear that Sri Krishna's status of Godhead is superior to Lord Mahavishnu. Having thought in this way, Arjun was totally amazed. Then Arjun asked Krishna whether these were actually the facts of the matter. And so Sri Krishna's reply is in Harivamsha, where Krishna tells Arjun, I did not go there for the Brahmana's son's sake. I went there, my dear friend, just to save your life. If it had been for the Brahmana's sake that I traveled to Vaikuntha, I would have done so right after his first child was abducted. The reason I went after the 9th child was stolen was not from obligation to Vishnu, but out of obligation to you, Sri Arjun. Thus, hearing the full truth from Arjun's thought, from Krishna's mouth, Arjun thought that whatever prowess, even including the Lord in the spiritual sky, has only been obtained by mercy of Krishna. So Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur ends by saying, in this last portion of 10th canto, we should understand the description of Supreme Personality of Krishna, the Ashraya Tattva, who is the subject of the 10th canto. Sri Sridhar Swami says that although this pastime occurred before the battle of Kurukshetra, it is recounted here at the end of 10th canto under the heading of Sri Krishna Bhagavan's supremacy and glories. So that was just beautiful recollection of that pastime.
So this is Canto 1, Chapter 15, and that's Canto 10,
Right.
Chapter 89, with a similar message, even more specific, but similar message of Arjun's being able to travel to the heavenly planets by the power of Krishna.
Yeah, I thought of mentioning this because of your description of how Mahabharata may be emphasis on a historical retelling, etc. Where Srimad Bhagavatam is all about the Ashraya Tattva, as Sridhar Swami says, and how this connects to that actual pastime of where these sections in chapter 15, Arjuna is indicating all the power is gone now that Sri Krishna Bhagavan is left.
Right.
Much more devotionally minded here.
Okay. Well, thank you for that sharing. You get absorbed. Anything else? It's 8:30. Srila Prabhupada ki, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki,